Hi guys, hope you're well. Welcome to DOdaily. It's Des here. Hopefully you're having a great week. Ready for another live episode, your questions answered. Got some really good ones to go at today. I put a message out through social media asking for some input around mental health. Of course, this week is Mental Health Awareness Week. And whilst it's something I like to talk about, like to sort of get involved in, try to keep it as light as possible. But this week, of course, it deserves a bit of an extra mention. We've got to do our best to keep the subject alive. It's one of those subjects people don't always like talking about and don't like run down the throat. And whilst I do touch on it, like I say, I don't like to sort of do it in a way which is going to put people off. Just talking about it tends to put people off. But I try to do it in a way which people can relate to. I try to be honest. Never use anyone else as an example unless they choose to do that. I'll always use my own experience, my own thoughts, and answer questions in whichever way I can, just to sort of let people know that there's always someone else out there suffering, someone else feeling it. What I will say about mental health before I get into it, they talk about poor physical health and good physical health. Well, mental health is just the same, isn't it? It's not something to be tagged with. We all suffer from it. We all experience it, whether it's in a good way or a bad way. I've said many times before that I'd like to just consider it as health, just like physical health is. It's your health and well-being, and I don't think we should be labelling anybody with it when, like I say, we all experience it and we're up and down the scale, unlike lots of things. We're other illnesses, other conditions, we might have them or not have them. Mental health, you're almost sliding up and down the scale day to day somewhat. So I've got some good questions to answer on that, and thanks for those who posted those in again, just sort of putting themselves out there, putting the name to a question. It's fantastic input alone. Again, it's just showing that it's not just me thinking about it, talking about it. So I'll get stuck into those shortly. What I will say before I get started, if you do want to input at any point, I'm trying to answer the comments and show the comments as well. So I appreciate any feedback as I go through. If anybody agrees with what I say, disagrees, got anything to add to any of the answers I give out, please post your comments. I'm trying to make this as interactive as possible. Personally, I'm trying to sort of slow myself down a bit. Still a bit nervous doing these things, particularly when it's live, but I realise if I slow myself down a bit, I'll probably give myself a little bit more time to think about what I'm going to say. So I'm trying to be a bit calmer, take it all in, take in what others are saying. Hopefully it adds a little bit to the viewing experience and it adds a little bit to what I can give out as well, a bit more value, I guess. So, please post in your comments. I'd really, really appreciate those. I'm going to start today. Of course, it's heavily focused today on mental health. It doesn't have to be that way. If you've got anything to post in you want to ask about other subjects, please do. But I'm going to start today sort of mentioning where I'm at right now. Yesterday, for the first time in a good few weeks, I had a really tricky day. A little bit frustrated that I can't run at the moment. The hamstring injuries is getting on my nerves a little bit. I want to get out there for a run because I know when I'm on top of that, everything tends to fall into place. I tend to be a bit more driven and a bit more determined in what I'm doing. And just yesterday, I felt myself just sort of a few bad habits creeping in, I guess. A few things that I don't want to, a few things that I need to do, which I've been putting off, and I always talk about creating these routines and habits. And I spoke on DOdaily. I'm a little bit disappointed with that as well. It didn't quite come out as clear and concise as I wanted it to be. I'm the first to admit it's not as clear and concise as I want it to be. But I just felt like I took a few backward steps to the beginning. I was kind of stuttering my way through it. There was a message there, but it was difficult to get it across. Just putting a bit of pressure on myself again, I guess. Having felt those frustrations of a few things not sort of going my way, particularly with the activity. I'm still getting out there. I'm still doing plenty. I'll always encourage to do whatever you can. I'm still making the most of whatever I can possibly do. I'm getting plenty of steps in, getting my walks in, working to those kind of challenges, things to keep me accountable, but things I really needed to do, quite important things I was just putting off a little bit. So I really sort of need to refocus, and the one thing that I've learned, and I'm going to just sort of pause right now, but I've learned one thing during lockdown, and it's kind of going to be the answer to the first question. So I was just getting a little bit ahead of myself there, but I'm just aware of where I am, and that's really important, isn't it? Because I think the one thing about mental health, if you understand where you're at a particular time, while sometimes it's not always the best thing, I'll be honest with you, being aware of it just means you're constantly sort of thinking about it. And if you're not in a great place, it can be difficult to manage as well, because it can be a bit overwhelming, a bit overpowering for where you are at that point, So it's brilliant to sort of understand it, and I've got a lot better understanding of it. But it's just sometimes important just to sort of realise the basics of what you can get back to. And that's what I had to do yesterday. I had to get out, get my steps in, I had to get my walk in. These are little challenges I've set myself this year. I had to sit down and work when I had to work. I've got kind of a busy schedule, but a schedule I can manipulate to myself. I had to be a little bit more structured and determined to get certain jobs done, and little things that I don't really want to do, although they have to be done. I've probably been putting them to the bottom of the pile, and that's been distracting me a little bit. So what I'm doing is trying to bring them to the top of the pile and get them done as well. So it's just, like I said, yesterday, for several reasons, just felt it again, but feeling much better today. Woke up early, was planning on going for a walk early actually, but come down and there was an amazing smell of coffee. So I ended up sitting around drinking coffee, but that wasn't the worst thing, having that little bit of time back again for myself, just to sort of attack the day again with real purpose. And I've been really at it. Of course, the Mental Health Awareness Week has given me focus through DOdaily and the social media to keep putting content out there, to keep talking about it, to keep trying to encourage people to get involved and get involved in DOdaily, but to also understand the impact exercise and physical activity can have on our mental health, and that's my purpose. That's what I'm here for. That's what I want to do. So it's really important for me to keep passing that message across. Like I say, I'm going to sort of crack into these questions. If anybody has got anything to add, please comment throughout or use any of the links that are flashing up across the bottom of the screen now. Really appreciate feedback. I'll have a throwback question at the end. We'll get back to one of those. We've not had one for a few weeks. Of course, last week it was my birthday, so I just did a normal type episode just to sort of fit in around everything else. But we're back to normal. So getting into these questions, the first question's from Steve. How has the pandemic affected your mental health? Well, I kind of touched on it there. One thing I have learned is that we never live to a consistent mental health, do we? No matter who we are. If people think they live happily, they're going to live happily ever after every day, or they're going to be in the worst position ever. It's not the case, is it? We're on the scale, sort of sliding up and down it, and sometimes very quickly. Touched on the fact I didn't feel great yesterday, but been feeling great for a few days before, a few weeks before that. Certain situations were kind of getting on top of me. I think the one thing I can say about the pandemic is it's really helped me in many ways. It's really sort of allowed me a bit more time to sort of learn a lot more about myself. In the last few years, I've been really busy interacting with people, building groups and do running and a lot more busy than I have been in the last 12 months in terms of being out there, and sort of responding to other people, being a bit more reactive to situations, whereas the pandemic's allowed me to be a lot more proactive. It was at the start of the pandemic that I found walking, because I couldn't run, so what, almost before the pandemic, I'd have that much to do. Sometimes my activity and myself kind of got pushed aside, but having that bit more time, it gave me that time to sort of learn a lot more about what I needed to do and get out there, and it gave me the time to get out there. So once I'd got out there, as hard as it was to find the time, it allowed me to sort of think a lot more, be a lot more mindful. And again, that's sort of within the question, so I'll come back to that. But just more mindful of what I needed to do for me and when I needed to do it, and perhaps going forward, what I need to drop to allow myself to do the things to keep moving forward. So in many ways, I think it's been really good. But like I say, for many situations, it's still up and down. The pandemic's affected myself and Kay. It's affected us quite badly at times, but we've got a lot more resilient with that as well. Not being able to control a situation and being someone who always says, don't be defined by things you can't control. When I believe that, when I go with it, it just keeps driving me forward. Whatever's thrown at us, there's been some really difficult personal circumstances as well recently, family issues that are really upsetting, which again, I've just got to sort of keep doing what I do. There was a time when I thought doing things like DOdaily, talking, sort of doing running and groups and putting myself out there as a bit of a public face, in front of groups and things like that, I'd have felt guilty. But at the end of the day, I've kind of understood, as tough as it is, life goes on, doesn't it? And we've got to make the absolute most sometimes. We've got to do whatever we can. So I guess the short answer to that question, Steve, which is a great question to start with in Mental Health Awareness Week, is it's made me a lot more resilient. Whilst I appreciate my mental health's not perfect, it's better than it was. I've touched on many times throughout DOdaily, 4 or 5 years ago, it was in a real bad place. So whilst now I experience some real highs, I understand there's going to be blips along the way, but that just makes us what we are, doesn't it? I said it lots of times in the last few weeks, we're creatures of emotion, and when we realise that emotions are only temporary, and whatever situation we're in is not going to be permanent, you can kind of prepare yourself for the bad days. And when the bad days come, there's going to be a good day. So you're preparing yourself to get better. Hopefully that kind of makes some sense. And that's where I'm at with it, throughout the pandemic and at the moment. So thanks for the question. Really appreciate that. Question from Dawn. Do you think, given the past year, of course, the pandemic, that there will be more need for mental health interventions? And do you think the government will pump enough resources into this? Well, to answer the first bit of that, that there will be more need for mental health interventions. Sorry, my mind went blank there. I'm not sure, is my honest answer. Before all this, being someone who's done some mental health training and gone on courses and spoke about it a lot through the work I do, mental health was ready to explode anyway. The way society deals with it, governments, organisations, look at mental health was ready to explode. It was kind of the word on the street that it was going to go that way. I'd imagine over the last year, a lot of that has been kind of held back. There's still lots happening. There's a real need for extra focus and the way the pandemic's affected people. But what I'm kind of mindful of as well with this is something that dawned on me. I was having a chat with Kay in the car just today. The pandemic's almost going to create another problem going forward, isn't it? Because there's lots of positive to come out. I've just spoke about some of them for me, and one of the real positives I found is I tend to feel a lot more at ease when I'm outside. It's been quiet. The reason I got into walking in particular was because I'd go out for a walk and I actually started enjoying it because I felt a lot more at ease doing it. There was no noise. There was no dirty air. The air felt fresh. And all of a sudden that felt so much better. But for something like that, when I go out walking and everything's come back to normal, it almost feels like it's going to go from 0 to 60 in about 4 seconds. Do you know? So from one day being in a pandemic and lockdown and being cautious, to it being absolutely crazy out there, noisy, busy, bustling environments. And whilst I like to socialise and be part of a busy, bustling environment, you know, like I say, things like walking, which I use to sort of take time and understand myself, you know, it's not quite going to be the same experience, isn't it? And I feel whilst I'll probably deal with it, you know, because I talk about it and I look at different ways to adjust, you know, there's going to be lots of people who think they need to go back to how it was, when in reality, when it goes back to how it was, they're not going to be able to cope because it's going to be too fast, it's going to be too soon. There's of course going to be concerns about catching the virus and illness and things like that, which is only natural. But I think there's so much that needs to be addressed. I'm just sort of looking at the question again. The government, will they pump the resources into it? I'm sure they will. Like I say, I think it was going to happen before, but I think the whole sort of outlook on it, you know, and the way they look at it needs to be really well thought out, because it's not just going to be a case of getting things back to normal and dealing with those people who struggled in the pandemic. You know, whenever anything changes, as a human race, we struggle to cope. If we're really honest, I'm trying to be better at that all the time myself. When the pandemic hit, I really worried about how I take things forward, how my sort of work-life balance pans itself out, what I'll do with Do Running and what I'll do with a community interest company when nobody can come outside. So I give it some thought and I adapted to it, you know, and that's what I think we need to put some focus into is how we get people to adapt to new situations. The pandemic's shown us that we didn't adapt very well, did we? You know, all the stresses of lockdown and rules and regulations and people not sticking to it, you know, and people disagreeing and getting worked up about it. It just shows that the messages weren't quite clear enough, were they? So what we need is some real clear communication, you know, of how we're going to address this problem. Like I say, one of the big things for me, people have got to stop sort of labelling it. Whenever you label anything, it creates stigma. You know, we spoke about race and bullying earlier in the week. You know, if you don't sort of put everybody in the same pot almost, you know, treat everybody exactly the same, then you're always going to have stigma with it. And this thing I say about mental health on the sliding scale, you know, we all suffer. They say 1 in 4. That's absolutely rubbish, isn't it? Lots of people I talk to now say it's 3 in 4. That's absolutely rubbish too. It's actually 4 in 4, because everybody suffers. Everybody has a good day. Everybody has a bad day. When they are sort of pushing the message and making people more aware of it, you just have to be a little bit careful that it doesn't tip some people over the edge. Do you know, I know people who suffer and who sort of say, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing that. I believe mental health starts at your own door. Do you know, you've got to be prepared to deal with it. You've got to want to deal with it, you know, and then sort of use the interventions that are being offered to you. You know, a lot of people just sort of assume that other things are happening, you know, blame social media, blame TV, blame what other people do. And the reality is we're all in control of our own destiny, aren't we? So whilst it's important to consider what the government are going to do, I'm sure they're going to put a lot into it, as the second part of that question asked. Because that was the plan before, by all accounts. You know, there was talk it's going to explode. I'm sure it will again, but there's a lot more issues to deal with, isn't there? So hopefully that gives you some sort of insight into my thoughts on that answer, on that question. A great one to answer. You know, I don't quite know is the reality, but I've given it a good go there, and I think that we really need to sort of start from a blank page with it, you know, because of this pandemic, because nobody in this lifetime almost has experienced anything like this. You know, it's not a case of we've always done it this way, is it? Because we've never done it this way. So we've got to start really sort of looking at the issues that are being created and not try to tar everybody with the same brush. But thanks for the question. The third question today is from Ben. do you already, or have you considered using mindfulness or meditation in your routine as an additional aid to your mental health? The short of it is, I've not used meditation. It's not something I dismiss. You know, I see people doing it. The river is a great place to see people meditating. In terms of mindfulness, I've kind of touched upon it already. The walking, you know, mindfulness is just taking that time out for yourself. And the one thing I learned at the start of lockdown was to really get out there, enjoy my walks. You know, not just go out to run and get those endorphins flowing and enjoy the activity, enjoy the achievement of getting in so many miles. When I couldn't do that, I took the pace off, and even took the pace off a walk. So I didn't always walk my fastest. And I lift my head up and started looking around at the things that I've probably passed a million times. I always talk about walking around the River Trent. There's a particular loop I do, and every single day I find something different. I've had this conversation with many friends. You know, it's a beautiful part of the world anyway. I wouldn't change it for the world. I take pictures and share them all the time. But I guess I'm just sort of subconsciously being more mindful of my situation. Do you know, I say about mental health and how I've got a lot better understanding of where I'm at, and I kind of understand where I am, you know, at certain points. The real issue with mental health is you don't really know where you are. You don't know if you're in a good place or a bad place, you know, and that's when it can get the better of us. So there's lots of techniques in terms of mindfulness I'm using. You know, I take time out. I mentioned there about having a coffee and just sitting down, listening to music. I know what to sort of put on and when and those kind of things. So I'll probably use a lot of those techniques already, you know, but the meditation, I've not used it. I wouldn't rule it out. You know, anything that helps, I'm always prepared to try new things. You know, doing DOdaily was something different. It gives me focus and extra sort of commitment every day. So if something like mindfulness was going to help, meditation, was going to help, then it's definitely something I consider. I know a few people who do it, who take a lot from it, you know, and there's different sort of reasons they do it, but they've kind of said to me in many ways it might be useful for you, because a lot of my sort of thoughts align with what they do and other parts of their sort of, I know, for example, I know a few people who are practicing Buddhism, and they've said that my sort of beliefs align with them. I wouldn't know, to be honest, because I've never sort of read or looked into it. But again, it's something that might be worth looking into, just to see if I can take something from that. Because the thing about mental health is we have to work on it all the time. So, and I've mentioned already, people are so frightened of change. You know, there's no reason to be frightened of them. I've said this week, you know, some of these practices, some of these sort of things people suggest, a lot of what is said is just tried and tested methods over thousands, millions of years. You know, people have been using them to feel good about themselves and to be that little bit healthier and better, you know, and that's all I'm trying to be. I touched on the fact I've had a couple of really upsetting situations, you know, and watching people suffer. You know, I just want to do my best not to. You know, I'd love to sort of encourage those people to take up some good habits and get involved as well. But it's about encouraging everyone, you know. So what I'll say to that, Ben, and it's a great question. You know, I'm always looking for something that's going to trip me up a little bit, because I don't know too much about meditation in particular. I just say, just try whatever works for you. You know, it can't harm, can it? We can always go back, and that's what really sort of frustrates me, when people won't try something different. You know, I'm always prepared to give it a go if it's only once, you know, and then if it works for me, you know, I'm not scared to say I'm taking that one forward. That's what happened with the walking. That's what's happened with DOdaily. That's what it happened with the running a good few years ago and losing weight. And I've tried things this year in terms of not eating meat, not drinking alcohol. And whilst I've kind of gone back to those, you know, I've learned something from it. I've taken something from it, and I realise how it can help. And if I choose to go down that road again, I'll do that. Some people go, that's not for me. I'd never give up this. I'd never do that. That's absolutely fine. But what you have to do is what you want to do. And again, going back to the first question, how has the pandemic affected me? Well, it's just made me realise what I want, and that's so important, isn't it? When I want to help people, and when you spend your life helping people and encouraging people to do things, sometimes you kind of get lost in it and forget about yourself, and one of the things I've really taken from that is it doesn't matter, because if we get ourselves, what the situation showed me is you can almost end up with nothing anyway. So you've got to be happy with what you've got. People come, people go, and as much as you build up relationships, sometimes people let you down as well. So, and not just people, situations, life's unfair, so it's important just to keep doing what you want. Hopefully that gives you some sort of insight into what I'm saying there. Thanks for the question. Really appreciate those. Just a slight change of subject, pretty much along the same lines, but Ian says you often talk about listening to others to keep motivated, other people, other podcasts, things like that, audio books to keep motivated. Who are you listening to at the moment, and would you recommend? Well, what I will say before I mention what I am listening to, Ian, another great question, because it's always about trying to inspire people. But one of the best things I've done in lockdown is subscribe to audiobook. I'm a sucker for my phone anyway. I've not always been a massive reader, but I committed to a subscription. It's only about £6 a month. It's something ridiculously cheap, but each month you get a credit, and this is not a promotion for audiobook. I'm not working for them. It's just something that I kind of stumbled across. You get a credit each month where you can buy a book. These books are, if you bought them in the shop, $17.99, $21.99, all these kind of prices, which probably worth paying if you are an avid reader. But like I say, I'm not. But I do love listening to things. I do love trying to get a feel by sort of almost being mindful whilst I'm listening. So audiobook was a brilliant purchase. I've probably got 3 or 4 credits in the bank, because these books also last for about 7 or 8 hours. So in terms of value for money, £6 for 7 or 8 hours of listening is absolutely fantastic. So if you are sort of thinking of how you can sort of read more, but you're not a reader, reading is also, listening is reading in a way. You're still learning, you're still taking something in. It just might be something worth considering. Of course, I listen to podcasts, I watch YouTube videos. I'm always encouraging those kind of things as well. But that's just something I thought I'd mention, because it's something I've taken so much from out on my walks, whether I'm working, whether I'm just having a few moments at home. It's just something where I can tune in and listen to people who I think can inspire me to sort of keep learning, keep trying to be better, and take on some of these things I'm talking about. But in terms of some of the things I'm listening to, I mentioned him a lot. I've currently got a book on the go by Matthew McConaughey, quite a inspirational guy, motivational speaker, been a big movie star, but got a really interesting sort of story, and I just kind of love his dulcet Southern American tones, just says it how it is, and that's brilliant, because that's the way I try to be. I try to be matter of fact, and what I get from that is that's exactly what he tries to be. I was recommended a few months ago a book called Run for Your Life by a friend. Again, it's how you sort of use running to aid your mental health, and also recommended from a friend. I do take on some of this advice. I'm always saying it's about listening. A book called The Miracle Morning. The reason I'm listening to that is because I struggle to wake up in the morning, and it's the one thing I know, if I can sort that out, I can be a lot better at everything I do, and give it a real go. And that's something I'm really determined to get right. So again, why would I not take up that invitation? And the latest one I downloaded was only yesterday. I've not listened to much of it yet, but it's called The Courage to be Disliked. It's about Japanese philosophy that shows you how to be the truest version of yourself. So I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into that. I always say, whilst I want to sort of do things for people and help people and support people, I've got to be true to myself as well. We've all got to be true to ourselves, and when we're doing that, we're more likely to relate better and get on with people who fit into our mold, almost, who fit into our lifestyle. And when you've got that, when you meet somebody who you really get on with, that meeting process is absolutely fantastic, isn't it? That's why human beings take so much from socializing and being around others. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one. I listen to a guy called DOdaily every single day. He does a podcast, another American guy who talks about motivation and how we can do a lot of the things I talk about. He can get the message across a lot better than me. But again, it's just me doing what I do is something perhaps a few people can familiarise with, and I just try and familiarise with these different people now. And then I'll just mention it. I'm listening to different kinds of music all of a sudden as well. Which not really been my thing. Bit out of left field, but really enjoy Rag and Bone Man. Real favourite right now. I know he's been around a couple of years, but again, just sometimes something strikes a chord with you, and it means a lot. And when I hear his songs, there was a time yesterday, I mentioned a lot, I was feeling really fed up. So I thought, I need to listen to this particular song, which I've really enjoyed this year. And it really sort of picked me up and sparked me up. And when I got up this morning and put the radio on, that song was on again. So with that and the coffee, it made me sort of really positive about what I'm doing. And that's what we have to do, don't we, guys? From all of what I've said there about mental health and trying to answer those questions, all we have to do is find the small things that keep us going. Mental health awareness is something that shouldn't be disregarded. Whilst a lot of people go, well, why can't we have it every day? We do have it every day. I focus on it every day. I look at it, I try and talk about it, I try and talk to people. Lots of people do the same, but there needs to be points in time as well where there's extra focus put on it. Otherwise, for many, it would get swept under the carpet, it would get pushed away, and it would drag that stigma on, and people would just sort of let that keep sort of building and get themselves into a bad place. When you understand that nobody's ever gonna, if you said, I'm feeling rubbish, I don't think most people would bat an eyelid. They'd say, can I help? And the worrying thing is when you are in a bad place, I've been there myself, you think if I say anything, it's just going to make things worse. It never makes things worse. It always makes things better, because if you confide in one person, already that relationship's got some trust, it's got some solidarity, and you're starting to work at that one person you're building a relationship with is improving your mental health, and the more you confide in, I'm not saying go out there and shout from the rooftops, but the more you sort of embrace it, get involved in it, support it, it's so much better for community and society, isn't it? We've got to sort of really take responsibility, I guess, whilst don't mention what the government are going to do and how they're going to approach it. We've got to take responsibility and realise that if we help ourselves, we start helping each other, don't we? We start becoming sort of inspirational figures within ourselves. We become advocates. We become people who have dealt with it. We help the NHS, for example. We take burden off the NHS, and that's something that's really important right now, isn't it? When we are looking for a world to get back to normal as quick as it can, we've got to let them deal with COVID backlogs I'm hearing about all the time, and try and be the best possible version of ourselves. And all that takes sometimes is making the smallest changes, but having the willingness to do it. And that's all I'm going to say about that today, guys. I really enjoyed answering those questions. I hope it all made sense. Of course, please like, share and subscribe to the video. If you've got any questions for me to answer next week, probably won't be so focused on mental health, but absolutely anything. It doesn't have to be serious. Of course, the biggest thing I do in life is try to encourage activity. This week, it's about sort of using activity, getting outside to realize what a difference it makes. I put a post on my social media today, if it does anything, it makes us self-aware, it helps us sleep, and it gives us something, it buys us a little bit of time when we're not feeling great, doesn't it? It gives us a bit of instant gratification. There's a saying in running circles, you'll never have a bad run. I don't think you'll ever have a bad walk or swim or bike ride. You might think it is, it might not go to plan, but at the end of the day, you always feel better for doing it. If you're not feeling fantastic, the easiest thing you can do is put some shoes on, get out the front door and have 5 minutes to yourself. Find a path you enjoy, a river, a view, the forest, absolutely what you can. Find it, enjoy it, and I can assure you, you'll be feeling better for it. So like I say, guys, thanks for listening. Please post your questions in to des@dorunning.org.uk. Don't have to go as deep, about running, about walking, about motivation, inspiration, what I'm doing this week, what I plan to do next week, whatever you want. I'd love to receive them. Without that input, I won't be able to do it. And once again, thank you to everyone that's got involved. Of course, it's back to a throwback. We didn't have one last week because of the type of episode it was. But what I'm going to say is, what have you done since the start of the pandemic that makes you more aware of your mental health? I'd love to get some feedback on that. I'd love you to post your answers in the comments, just hopefully to motivate and inspire someone else to think, oh, that's worked for me, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's about listening. Whilst I'm talking now, I've read a phrase today by the Dalai Lama who says, you never learn anything from talking about what you already know. It's not until you listen that you take something in. That's important to remember, isn't it? So thanks for listening to me, guys. Like I say, please like, share and subscribe. It'd be fantastic if you can keep supporting. Slightly different for Wake Up to Walk tomorrow. I'll be out in Nottingham City Centre. I've actually arranged as it is Mental Health Awareness Week to meet up with people locally. I'm taking a break from the Robin Hood way I'm doing. I won't be doing that this week. I'll just be going to connect with nature. That's been the theme from the Mental Health Foundation in terms of the campaign this week. So what we're going to do is take a walk out the city centre. I've invited people in to join me, so it'll be something slightly different. Of course, I'll be doing DOdaily, so please tune in the morning. I'll get that on as quick as I can, but really looking forward to getting out there, meeting some friends. It'll do wonders for me. I go out and enjoy that time alone, which is great, but sometimes it's nice to add other people, and it's always better together, isn't it? So I'll be out first thing for that. Hopefully the weather stays as it is. Still forecast lots of rain, but it's been a lovely day in Nottingham. Get out there, guys. Get active. Use exercise and activity to stay on top of your mental health. But please give some of what I've said some thought, and have a great evening. Until tomorrow, and Wake Up to Walk. Just doing it.